for actually being here. I think it is a very, very important topic. And I guess hopefully what I'm trying to get out of today is show you how important it is through how it's changed my life and how it's changed the direction of where I am today. And I had a plan, I had a vision, I had goals, and concussion was actually the thing that stuffed up. So I thought the way I do it today is not a bit of an agenda, but I'll talk through photos. Just quickly, also the last time me and Kate we were doing this at schools, we were going to schools, and we only had like 5 minutes between us. So now it's got a bit longer. So hence why my intro is so long too. So but I'll quickly tell you just about who I am. So I was born in South Africa. I think today I'm a bit scared to say that, especially after what happened. But yeah, born in South Africa. I moved over when I was 14 years old, and then I lived in Auckland, went to school in Auckland. Finished school, and then I played professional cricket for 4 years, and then again I had to stop playing because of the concussion thing. I tried to do a bit of accounting, and I realized that wasn't for me. It was too many numbers and stuff. So I did that for a year, and I said, no, I need to get back into the sporting scene. And then I saw this job pop up for Sport Otago. And then I said, yeah, let's get back into the sporting front, see if I can help out again. And then, so today where I'm at is I'm working at Sport Otago, and I'm also a cricket coach, helping the Otago Sparks. So, but the main reason we're here is concussion, and I want to jump into that. So again, like I said, I'm going to start off with a bit of just talking about photos. And actually, when I went back to look at these photos, it was the first time I've actually gone back and looked at photos since my concussion days, because you always try and just block it out of your mind, block it out of your memory, because you almost don't want to relive it again. But so it was a bit emotional, but again, it's also, I look at it differently now. I was pretty proud of the things I had achieved in my sporting career. I just want to mention also, this is my journey. I think it's also important to know that the concussion thing doesn't just have to be sports. It's also, it could be whatever. A kid falls off the bike or something along those lines. But we all face the same sort of pressures, and I'll explain that soon. So the first one I'll talk about is there was a pressure to perform for me if I look back at what happened. So that's me. I was captain, and in that photo there's actually 3 All Blacks there. So we've got all Rika Ioane, Kira Ioane, and Shawn Stevenson. And obviously at the time you didn't know that, but looking back now, I'll put that on my CV. So the pressures to perform. And what I want to mention with that in terms of the concussion thing is, you obviously with every youngster, you want to make your family proud, and sometimes you go over and beyond to do that, and you literally, in my case, there you put your body on the line. And then I had a stigma when I was in Auckland rugby setup that I was the best tackler within the first 15 comp. So that's a reputation I've got to try and uphold. I made my debut at the age of 15 years old in front of basically 12,000 people at the Auckland Grammar vs Kings game, which again, there's a lot of pressure that I can tell you now, a 15-year-old boy, you don't know how to deal with it. And I think to date, that was probably still the most nerve-wracking day of my life. And then, yeah, captain of the side and then TV game. So again, how do you deal with that? So with all that pressure to perform, you kind of, like I said, you've got a reputation to uphold. So now I'm the best tackler in the comps. I've got to prove that. And for me, it was literally putting my head on the line. So I've got to make sure that I need to keep my reputation. There's these Auckland scouts. There's not so much my family, but I need to prove that I'm the best tackler. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, what a stupid reputation to have, actually. But at the time, you think you're the man, because you're destroying, and especially in Auckland, there's a lot of Polynesian boys. So what do? I just said, well, I just got to chuck my head in there and just make sure they go down. So yeah, with their reputation to uphold, I was just always trying to see if I can smash people. And I think looking back, I didn't realize the impact this had at the time. So with my footy days, I had, I think it was 3 concussions where I was fully knocked down. And back then, this was 2012, or was it just about, okay, how can I get this sorted, and even the pressure from the coaches. How can I get my mind or my head sorted again so that I can be out there, say, for the semi-final in 2 weeks' time? And I can tell you now, I wasn't ready at all. But again, the pressure of leading your side, of having its reputation, you said, okay, yes, coach, I'm ready, I'm happy to go. And I know, looking back, I wasn't ready to go. And I still remember my first game back, it was a semi-final after, I think this is actually one that I got concussed. That one there. But after that game, we had a semi-final. And I, like I said, I knew I still had headaches. I still had, I wasn't clear to play. And the first tackle I made, I got a knock to the head. But it wasn't the one where I was knocked out. It was just one where your whole brain just sinks, and then you know, oh no. And then what you do, you stand up, then you kind of run it off. You just try and pretend like, okay, the coach see that? No, did my mum and their parents? I don't even know where they are, but no, and then you carry on. And I think that's the thing. That's why I say this is so important, because back then, well, for me, I didn't feel like the whole concussion thing was as widely known, as widely seen, as it is today. And I do genuinely think if I knew more about concussions back then, I probably would have still played cricket, and I still probably would have played, my dream of what I wanted to achieve within the professional sporting space. So moving on from that, so I mean, from upholding reputation, you pay the ultimate price. And then I find myself quite a bit just sitting on the sideline. I was fully dazed there. I don't know what was going on. I remember that one. I was lying on the ground, and my ex-girlfriend at the time came running to me, and I just didn't know who she was. And I don't know how we stayed together after that. But I said, "Who are you? Where am I?" But yeah, so the thing is, that's happened 3 times now when I was still in school. And the one thing I didn't realize about concussions too, looking back, is that actually it's not just like a common injury. It's not like, okay, I broke my arm and it'll just heal. Every single brain and every knock to the brain is different. And even now, like if I look back at my concussions, I don't know whether the amount of knocks that I had, whether that's actually going to affect me in 10 years' time from now. So as I stand here today, I mean, I've got a little daughter too, and you always in like, did I push it too far? Did I play that one game too many? Even to the quick, I'll explain that now. But the thing is with head knocks, you just don't know. The only way I'm going to find out is in 10 years' time when I'm actually there. Well, I don't think I will know. I think my wife will tell me. So yeah, then you pay the ultimate price, the consequence of getting knocked out again, sitting next to the field, and you really try and push to play the next game again. So that was my footy day. So 3 massive concussions, and obviously plenty of little head knocks as you do in the game of rugby. So I decided to let's move on to cricket. So in that license, I had to choose between cricket and rugby, and I said, okay, well, I've had too many head knocks, so let's play cricket. So this was me in the 19. At the top was the 19 Cricket World Cup in UAE, and it was just us in Christchurch. So I said, okay, well, now I don't have to worry about any head knocks anymore, because it's cricket. So I can just go out there and have fun. And I had a good season. I ended up playing as I went on. I played for the Auckland side there at the top left for 2 years. It was my Auckland debut, and then also played for the Bulls. But then when things became real for me was when I did get hit by the cricket ball to the helmet, and all of a sudden, normally you get hit to the head, normally 2-3 weeks of rest, and you kind of get back into it. And I started realizing every time I got a hit to the head, it was about 2-3 months, and it's just lingering headaches. And with that, also all this research of concussions and the CTE findings and all that sort of stuff started coming out. And you can't help having had a lot of concussions to actually look into that stuff. And I know you can't always rely on Google, but I mean, what else you can't rely on other than Kate's beautiful presentation? So yeah, that's the sort of start. And then I got hit by the ball, and then I was out for 2 months, and it just did in my head. I didn't want to go away. And then I think within my cricketing career, my short career, my 4-year professional, I got hit, I think, 3 times flush to the helmet. And everyone just kept on for longer and longer. And when I realized this might be actually a problem was when the bolt started, we went to Moana pools, and I dove into the pool, and just that little connection to the water gave me a massive headache. And so my coach said, yeah, I can't dive into the pool anymore. Um, so that was tricky, but then you try and play mind games with yourself, saying that you don't, you got this, it's fine, just try and don't get hit. But the thing is with professional sport now too, in the end, is the opposition teams, they scout you. So they know I'm struggling with concussion. So what do they do? As soon as I walk out to bed, they just act my head. And then there was heading into my last season, it was pretty tough mentally for me because the Otago side, they gave me the #1 contract. So they saw me as the most, I wouldn't say valuable player because we were black caps on the side, but the most up and coming player. So you get paid the most. So, so, so now I had to deal as a youngster with that pressure that I'm getting paid the most in the team. Yet I'm struggling with this concussion thing that my coach doesn't even really know. So in my last year, I got dropped. I got dropped a few times, and then the team starts looking at you. Well, why are you getting dropped? You're getting paid the most, and then you don't want to talk to people, so you get quite isolated. And you think you can work your way through it, but you just genuinely can't. Um, so you go on this downward like spiral, to be honest, and it gets real isolating. But in the end, after 4 years, I called my coach in, and I said, "Listen, I think I've got to pull the pin." I was 23 at the time when I retired. Um, yeah, and then sorry, guys. Um, I think oh, yeah, I'm back. The hardest thing was I guess family. You know, your family, they do so much for you. They moved countries for you to become whatever you dream to be. In my case, you know, I was either a cricket or rugby player. To tell them that, yeah, no, I'm gonna stop playing. Um, and then I put these other photos on because, you know, whether I liked it or not, that I struggled with it quite a bit. So Carl's my best man. He was my best man in my wedding, and our little journey together was he was the first man I met at Auckland Grammar School, and then we were best mates. I mean, we've had Christmas together for many years, and when I was in my last year at the Bolts, I had #1 contract, and he had #1 at Canterbury, and we still said, so our families, I mean, my mum and dad, and his mum and dad, they just literally went away this weekend again, so we just family mates, and I still remember me and him said, okay, well, let's do this thing together, you know, let's both make the black caps, let's both just go for it, and then there was our little goal. Um, so, and then you see him, obviously, I think, getting paid that for 6 weeks. And it's not like, you know, I think it's a 6 week gig, I feel. So I think today it's still the highest paid cricketer in terms of that. And you're obviously so excited and happy for your mate. It's your best mate, but you know, you start thinking, oh, what if, or what could it be? You know, there could have been me that, and then I look, this is my mate. He's a South African Proteas captain. Um, and we were best mates in South Africa, and then you know you got this guy, it's just a Rugby World Cup winner. He's a Springbok. He's an ugly man that looks. But anyway, these two were my real close mates back in South Africa, and they both played for the Springboks. And these are just a number of. And then you know you always thought you're going to be with these guys one day, and it's not. You don't want to say it's jealousy, but it is a bit. You know, even though it's your mates. Because now I've got to live with what could it be, whatever. But anyway, I think that was the hardest thing when I was going through all of this. I was going on my downward spiral. My best mate, they were going the opposite direction. So that was pretty tough to take. And so from getting #1 contract, I had to jump on a forklift for a year and a half doing night shift work. Start work at 11 p.m. and finish here at 9 a.m. So again, it builds your character a bit, I think, you know, and you learn a lot about yourself. But yeah, so I think that the message I want to get across is just how serious this whole concussion thing can be, and it's not just about, you know, your head, even though that's the most important thing, but it's also it genuinely affects the rest of your life in a way. But in saying that, Yeah, so as I said, 2 years of later, I didn't want to get close to any sports. I didn't want to go to a cricket game, a cricket field, or even watch anything, any sports. I just had to. There's a lot of doubt too. You're like, oh, should I just do it anyway and just put my head on the line? And it's fine. See if I can maybe get a IPL contract. It'll be worth it if I get that amount of money. Get another concussion. Will it be worth it? But then again, you start playing with yourself. You're like, shoot up. But then you think of your family. Well, what's the consequence going to be if I get one more hit to the head? Because I'm going to be 35 one day. My family's going to be there, and I can't even talk to them. So I might just not be there. Who knows? I might have pushed that line already, or I might not have. I won't know. But eventually, time heals. So you get over there, and today I'm back into the coaching space. So that's the Otago Sparks women's team. So today I'm the assistant coach manager for them, and this is a club side that I'm coaching too. So after a few years away, I said, okay, well, let's get back in another way, and let's do coaching. So now the girls at Sparks, they're starting the season now next weekend, which is really exciting. But and I do enjoy the coaching side. I feel like I just mentioned it earlier. The coaching side, it's more about other people. We sometimes as a player you can get quite self-absorbed, and it's quite a selfish sort of vibe, especially in the professional play. But yeah, so that's what I'm at today. So back to the concussion thing. I hope this my little message today can just show you that I thought and everyone else believed that I had everything going for me. And everyone said, well, I'm either going to play professional cricket or professional rugby. And I didn't realize that concussion was going to take it away from me. And, as a youngster, I think there'll be a lot of kids and they've got dreams to make it one day, similar like I had. And, sometimes that's all you see. Sometimes that's you give your everything for that. And then when that gets chopped off, you're like a headless chicken trying to find out, well, what should I do now? So just with that being said, I just want to say, like, I think all of us, we need to take this concussion thing, but a bit more serious certainly than what I thought. And even the thing with when I gave up, it wasn't really. I don't think I needed a doctor, even though I had a lot of advice given. And I sat down with my coach, made sure I sat down with Ben Smith to talk, because he's had a lot of concussions, to talk through it so that I can just come out on the better side. But sometimes you know yourself best, and I knew, okay, if I go to a doctor, even though I've got a lot of advice from them, their job is just to try and get you back as soon as you can. That's their job. But the thing is, I know my brain, and I knew, okay, if I can't even dive into the water, then I get headaches, and even now it affects my life, because I want to go ski, in Queensland, but I don't want to go and ski and fall and get another knock to the head. I've played a few club cricket games, and I can't help it but think, okay, they're not as quick as, say, first class, but can't help it but think, okay, just try not to get hit. Just try not to get hit. So now I'm always living that sort of cautious life now, which is a bit annoying. Water skiing, I can't really do. So it's had its effect on me. So yeah, I think I'll just kind of, I don't know if there's any other questions, I think we can go there, and then that's pretty much my story with concussions. But I hope, just makes it a bit more real. And even now, I think when Kate talks, I truly listen, because I'm also coaching now, and I know the effects. The other day, I had a kid, and I hit him in the head. I thought, oh no, I didn't tell him how bad it can be, but I know how serious it is. So I said, mate, no, you're not going to train until you get out of that nets. Even if you're feeling all right, you just go sit there. It's fine. Just trust me on this.
Okay.
So it's just about us taking it a bit more serious and knowing you've only got one brain, use it for everything. So thank you, team. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I think,
Why don't you, obviously your coach knew that you'd had a few knocks. Were they not alarm bells ringing saying you have to sit this out, or was that your own pressure on yourself that kept you going?
Yeah, I think they know, but like sometimes well, you see this now. It's pretty sad. As a coach, they just got one. Like even when I left the team, it was just they replaced me and they carry on.
Yeah.
So I think especially in high performance, they just all they want to care about is winning. My coach that I had Rob Walter, he's actually now the coach here, South African coach, which is exciting. He was the bowls coach. He really understood where I was coming from, and even when I told him, Coach, I'm gonna stop playing, yeah, he fully understood. Obviously, he was hurting for me, but he understood the consequence of concussions and having more and more and more of it. So they support it, but I do, because even now being in the coaching space, I can also understand how you do get those coaches that will just say, no, I don't care, just come play.
I think that's something for parents to think about too. Does your child's coach have their best interests at heart, or they just want to win and take away a medal or whatever it might be? So you are the person who has to advocate for your child and make sure they are being looked after.
It's really hard to argue with your child's coach though, hey? And as they get up to higher level, like and your kid, no, my coach says I'm playing. And you're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I think we can probably all see that argument panning out, right?
Oh, yeah, I wish more teenagers could have access to your talk, because I think it is an eye opener and a reminder of, wow, my brain has to last me the rest of my life, and maybe it is a good decision to sit the rest of the season out and myself recover.
I think we're sort of opening the conversation earlier, up to the play rather than moving it to the point where you've got to argue with the coach. It's more about, well, here's a line in the sand that I'm not prepared to cross. Or my child. What's my child?
I think just get to know the coach, kind of, because if you get to know the coach, you kind of know where his heart is at, whether there's extension, because you do get coaches that do it for them, which is sad. You do get coaches that truly just care about the individuals. But I think the best thing we can do, I guess, as parents and coaches, or as parents, is get to know the coach, because I feel, and this was my journey too, as I was getting older, I was just kind of telling my parents, no, I'm going to play it, it's fine, it's fine. You just get real isolated, you just say, no, it's fine, even though it's not.
And to be fair, coaches, I mean, a lot of them probably haven't been to a talk this.
Yes.
But we have code protocols, and we need to actually support those code protocols. Like your rugby's got the protocol there. We must make sure that they're enforced and that people aren't blurring the lines. And stand down periods that are there for a reason. So it's just, let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Awesome.
I have an idea, and we're recording this, and each of young people are in teams, and let's edit this down so we can pass on Shawn's really powerful conversation to each of those coaches. And we may not be able to get you in the dressing room with every team, but we can get you on the screen in front of them with this. I think that'll be a powerful thing, eh?
Yeah, to be honest, this is the first time.
Back to Central.
There's a cricketing gig. No, because this is like, I'm 28 now, retired on 23. This is the first time that I'm actually having a presentation on everything. So I've never really done, I've spoken at schools a bit. We had 2.5 minutes each.
I think you've got a new career coming.
Oh yeah, I know it's important. It's literally affected me. So
I think teenagers would listen to someone like you because you're young.
Yeah,
You're
cool,
cool. Yeah, like when if it just makes because we're telling them they're not at the moment. And they're not, obviously they listen to the coaches, but the coaches doesn't have the
But they don't listen to authority, in their brain, they don't listen to authority, so they need that inspiration.
someone like
Connection,
and
Yeah, definitely, I'll share.
TikTok.
yeah.
Not done.
We sort of know that parents can be they have to play their part, don't they? If the parents are a wee bit on the side, blurring the lines, that's giving somebody the green light to, okay. So the parents have got a part to play.
They do. Yeah, they do. Cool, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
what I'm just going to talk a wee bit about today is for you guys, is can I have a hands up who's a parent here? Of a young person, who's a coach as well, who's a manager or have something to do with the team? Cool, awesome, great. Anyone a medical professional? Any doctors? Okay. So what you guys need is just some real basics. Okay, so what do you do if someone has a head knock? How do you know if someone's had a head knock if you haven't seen it? And then what do you need to do in terms of getting kids back to sport? Because yeah, like Shawn talked about really powerfully, they're big calls to make, right? And if we don't get it right, no, we don't know what's coming around the corner. So please ask questions as we go through today. ACC resources as well. If you ask a question, I'll give you something from ACC, but you can also download them from their website and they'll send them out in the post in a nice big package to your back door, as many as you need, okay? So I'm part of the Centre for Health Activity Research at the School of Physiotherapy. I'm a research associate there in our concussion team. We work on projects such as you've recently came out the mouthguard study, force impact on rugby. We worked with New Zealand Rugby on developing the guidelines for under 19s and over 19s. We've done the work with ACC. My lead in this project is around secondary schools concussion management and the processes that schools have in terms of identifying people that may have had head knocks and how we manage them back to school and back to sport. So this is my beautiful team. Danielle is currently still in France. Verilies is sadly South African, not you, Shawn, I think that's Kessler. And the other AUT guys are. So what we're going to do again today is just talk about the basics for you guys. Okay, so when you leave here, you'll feel a wee bit more confident to know what to do if your kid has a head knock on the week. And we'll talk a wee bit about what do you do in the days and the weeks following a concussion. And then what do you do? Who do you talk to get more information? Because we go to the emergency room or we might go see our GP and then what? Where do we go to? Okay, so concussion, basics of it. We don't, as parents, need to know too much of the ins and outs of this, but it is quite serious to know. So concussion works at a cellular level in our brain. We can't actually, there's only one scanner in New Zealand that we can see the impacts of concussion from. Obviously, there's a lot more in North America, which is why they've got a lot more research here, but it's really at that basic cellular metabolic level, okay? So a concussion is the consequence of an impact to the body or the brain, okay? So Shawn's big tackles, we could see there the angles he was coming in, that huge force going through would cause great impact to the brain because the brain is pretty much a golf ball sitting in a balloon of water, all right? And if you throw that golf ball is going to move, okay? That golf ball is also attached to a piece of string, which is your spinal cord, and that's the really important part here, okay? It's not necessarily the brain per se, but it's this neck and this connection, which is where the issues happen. And when, you have a big tackle or you fall off your skis or you go mountain biking and you fall off, think about that balloon again. That golf ball is going to move, but that string is going to stretch. And when that stretches, your body goes, right, this is life or death, and dumps all of the chemical pathways out into your bloodstream, okay? That's called a metabolic cascade. And it's just pretty much all the information that's sitting there just disappears. And doing that, it also severs all the connection. So someone kind of goes into the wiring boards and just flicks off the switch a wee bit, everything just falls out. And that's okay, it's only temporary, right? It's just your body surviving. Got to look after the brain. I'll just drop all the information right now. So it's just normal processing gets through. Okay, but it does reconnect. Your body's great at reconnecting. Okay, if it's not a real serious one, all that will happen is just take a few weeks. And again, I say this because I don't want to scare you guys. It's just, it will reconnect unless it's serious. It's just a simple few weeks of rest and recovery to make sure that all of those wires, all those neurons connect back up. Okay, but that dumping means that you don't know what day it is because your body doesn't have that connection anymore. It means that you might walk along and fall over because your body doesn't have that connection anymore. So it's concussion is a temporary mild traumatic brain injury. Okay. We did some work with New Zealand Rugby a while back and did these cool videos, and these guys are better at explaining it than I am. Sorry.
Concussion is an injury to your brain. Of chemical changes in the brain, and it can sometimes stretch and damage your brain cells.
And our brain is really important because it controls everything we do, our movement, our senses, our thinking, memory, sleep. how we feel and like our levels of happiness and that.
Come call out when we suspect concussion. Stop play and have a proper discussion. Because playing on with concussion is crazy dangerous. It puts you at risk of really serious injuries that can stuff up your life long term.
You might feel like you're letting your mates down by leaving the game, but real mates want you to have a long, healthy life, one where you can continue to play rugby. This one game doesn't mean much compared to your whole life, does it?
Knowing when to ask for help with suspected concussion or up for it, it actually proves the strength of our unit, you know, and it proves we've got each other's backs.
As players in our clubs, we're all role models. There's virtually always someone younger looking up to you. So you need to show them that a real rugby player is one who listens to their body, thinks long term about their health, and looks out for their teammates in the same way.
It's not just the players. Coaches, referees, administrators, and supporters all need to take responsibility and call out concussion.
It can feel like a hard call, but now we know it's the right call. Real rugby people would never walk past a suspected concussion.
Our rugby club's communities here in Aotearoa are amazing, but we need to make concussion discussions more common. We all have a role here to play in keeping each other safe.
We are brother and sisterhood. We need to look out for each other everywhere we can. Bring on the concussion discussions.
I reckon that guy's going to have an awesome career. I feel that. It's pretty cool, we do. Okay, so those guys are awesome, mate. It's just serious and we need to pay attention, okay? We need to call it out. It's scary, but it's no biggie, okay? It's just using our common sense. Reason why concussions are serious, Shawn talked a wee bit about this herself, and thank you, because I know it's hard to talk about your experience when it's not a positive experience. Shawn's done a fantastic job in our high schools coming in and talking about the real life stuff. Often we bring in the All Blacks who say, yeah, I've had a head knock and I needed to recover. Those guys are still playing, right? So young people see the All Blacks or the Highlanders or whoever and say, yeah, no, they've had concussions, but they're still there. We don't actually often hear the stories of what if, okay? So as well as long-term impacts on our lives, if a young person has a concussion, the secondary injury syndrome is probably one of the biggest things for us as parents to be aware of, okay? So if a student has a concussion, their brain's not working in the right way. So if we then send them out mountain biking, their brain's not working in the right way, their responses aren't going to be great, not the greatest decision we could make, okay? Because our brain isn't working, and that's why we've enforced that long period of rest, okay? We also know that, again, if people have a concussion and then they go out again and play sport and risk another one, this is when the real serious damage has, okay? And I know there was a thing on Sunday the other week about rugby league players and the impacts of not recovering from a concussion, having another one. That's when we get things like spinal cord injuries and brain bleeds, okay? So seriously, don't let your child play sport if they've had a concussion recently, okay? We call these things red flags, okay? Because they're quite scary and they're quite big. They're not very common, but the more concussions you've had, the more at risk you are of these red flags, and we'll talk about them soon. And as we've talked about, long term, it's not a great idea to let kids keep going after concussion, because there is some long-term mental health and cognitive impacts, which we just started to find some more information about. So recognise, recover, remove. That's what ACC says. This is another girl. She's also fantastic. And we'll talk a wee bit now about how to spot a concussion.
A lot of guys down here. Tricky to spot. Sometimes they have stuff outside and section. Sometimes it's their teammates or even on the sideline. Perhaps you don't look good.
You've got some signs to look out for that a player needs to see a doctor right away. They have a decreasing level of consciousness, are experiencing convulsions, are vomiting more than once, or have tingling or numbness in the arms or legs. Other obvious signs of concussion include suspected loss of consciousness, being clearly dazed, or staggering when the player is getting up. However, sometimes the signs could be as subtle as the player not feeling right, having reduced performance, or poor memory. If you notice any of these obvious or subtle signs of concussion, you need to keep the player off the field ASAP. Remember, these symptoms can be delayed up to 48 hours later. The Maddox questions can also be used to help identify when a possible concussion has occurred. These questions are: what venue are we at today? Which half is it now? Who scored last in this match? And who did you play last week?
So when we talk about Maddox questions, guys, I don't want you guys to take away from that. Don't listen to that. Common sense questioning will help you identify if the person has a concussion, okay? Doesn't need to be.
I've watched a lot of games now. Yeah, and concussion can be very tricky to spot. Sometimes the players
This bit again, it's really
themselves
important.
and take that, but other times it's their teammates or even us on the sideline who have to say, hey mate, you don't look good.
Here are some signs to look out for that a player needs to see a doctor right away. They have a decreasing level of consciousness, are experiencing convulsions, are vomiting more than once, or have tingling or numbness in the arms or legs. Other obvious signs of concussion include suspected loss of consciousness, being clearly dazed, or staggering when the player is getting up. However, sometimes the signs could be as subtle as the player not feeling right, having reduced performance, or poor memory. If you notice any of these obvious or subtle signs of concussion, you need to get the player off the field ASAP. Remember, these symptoms can be delayed up to 48 hours later. Thematics questions can also be used to help identify when a possible concussion has occurred. These questions are, what venue are we at today? Which half is it now? Who scored last in this match? And who did you play last week?
And remember, sometimes symptoms don't show up until after the game is over. So we all need to keep an eye on our players for at least 48 hours. The most common things to look out for are players not feeling right. Headaches from exercise or school or work or dizziness or fatigue.
These suggestions will help get you started, but if you're serious about helping us with concussion discussions, you can find a full list of the signs and symptoms and red flags at www.rugbytoolbox.co.nz.
Okay, so as a parent, it's common sense, right? The most common sign that you'll pick up from as a parent is your child just not feeling right. They might have headaches, they might just be a bit off, but they might just, of all of our students that we work with, the key sign symptom is I just don't feel right in myself, okay? When you have a concussion, it's hard to know what that not feel right is, but it's just not right. Hey, we're going to talk quickly about these red flags, okay? And this is particularly those involved in snow sports or any kind of high impact, high danger sports, and the other ones too. Concussions are, temporary and loss of brain functioning, all right? But the impact and the injury can cause more serious injuries as well, okay? And this is when these red flags kind of give us an indication that something's not right. And saying that though, we're all clever individuals. And if we see any of this stuff, we're going to call an ambulance right away anyway, right? And hopefully if you suspect a head injury or a concussion, you'll get them to the doctor anyway. But if a person complains of neck pain and has double vision and seems increasingly confused, get on the phone, ask for that ambulance or that helicopter. If they repeatedly vomit, if you vomit once after concussion, that's normal, but still needs medical care. If they repeatedly vomit, you need to get that ambulance there. Same with tingling in the arms, get that ambulance. And if the headache is worse and worse and worse and they're losing consciousness, call an ambulance. You would do that anyway, right? Please tell me you do that anyway, if you saw any of this. But medical care, number one. The less obvious stuff, which is what you guys will pick up probably in 24 hours after your child has an injury, are some of these signs and symptoms, okay? And often, we talked a wee bit before about coaches, often coaches don't actually see the impacts that happen for our students, particularly if we're looking at the likes of rugby, there's 30 kids on the field and they may not see that 2-second impact which causes a concussion. So it's important for us on the sidelines to recognise, well, did any of these things happen or did anything happen there, okay? So the most common, other than it's not feeling right, is you're going to have headaches, sensitive to light, a bit forgetful. Youth particularly get really agitated and a bit angry, and act really irrational. You're like, shoot, that's just not you. You might be a 14-year-old boy, but that's still just not you, okay? Yeah. So please go, and if you suspect a head injury or you see it, get them to the doctor. I know that we hear a lot of stories from parents about how they've had a head injury and then they need to go to ED and they have to sit there for 6 hours. And it's really annoying because they didn't get there for 6 hours and they didn't do anything. If you get to sit there for 6 hours and they don't do anything, that's awesome. That's what you want, okay? They're monitoring and they're making sure that nothing serious is happening. And then you can go home as a parent and rest easy knowing that you've done the right thing. Worst thing that would happen is if you took your kid home, oh, yeah, you've had a head knock, you'll be right, I'll watch you at home. And in that 6 hours, something happened at home, okay? You want to be in the ED, in the doctor's surgery, as hard as it is, it's the best place to be, okay? So if you see something on the ski field or the sports field or on the mountain bike trails, use your common sense. Administer basic first aid. Don't move someone if they've lost consciousness or they're unresponsive, particularly because necks are quite important here. That spinal cord's quite important, so just leave them be. Get on the phone, get an ambulance, okay? If they're up and about and they're moving around and they're feeling, you know, all right, but they look a bit off, get them to the doctor, okay? Get them to urgent doctors, ED, even your general practice. The sooner you do it as a caregiver, you'll feel better about it knowing you've done the right thing. Another reason, if that's not encouraged enough, you need to go and get them on the ACC forms, okay, so that they can get the support to get back to school or sport or whatever else they need, okay? Our biggest issue as physiotherapists is that concussions happen on the sports field. Students don't go and see a doctor, but they might have a sport physiotherapist that they're working with. And the physiotherapist knows there's a concussion, but they're treating it under the guise of another injury because the only person who can diagnose concussions in New Zealand are qualified doctors at this stage, okay? So a physiotherapist can't diagnose a concussion, okay? It has to come through a qualified doctor. There's changes coming in about the next 12, 24 months, but that's why it's so important, okay? And the issues that we find there is that our sports physios knows there's a concussion, couldn't get the kid to the doctor, treating it under the guise of something else, usually a neck sprain. And then 6 months down the track, they're not recovering and they need that ACC help. But ACC comes back and goes, oh, but you didn't have an injury 6 months ago. This didn't happen, okay? Qualified doctors are where it's at the moment.
Doctors adequately skilled to pick up on concussion.
No, and this is another issue. Sorry, don't worry. A few weeks ago, a few weeks ago, we had a young man at a rugby game up north. That was part of our study. Had a head injury. We said, you need to go to the doctor. Go there, urgent doctor. Mum dropped him at the urgent doctor, went to find a car park, went into the urgent doctor. The doctor said, oh, yeah, looks like you had a concussion. He said, I've got my formal tonight. He said, yeah, go. Maybe just have a couple of beers. Don't do too much. That guy's not recovering very well because the doctor wasn't adequately skilled to know. It's really hit and miss. I'd like to say it's improving a lot. We do a lot of work in terms of educating GPs, but it is still hit and miss, okay?
So here we have the concussion physios, the
Yep.
studio, so they can't go.
They can't diagnose, they can treat and they can manage if they're referred from a general
Does it
practice.
still have to be?
So you still have to have a referral
You
to
can just go straight to them.
You can go.
You can go
But
straight
then
to them.
they couldn't do like an ACC.
They'll send you back to the doctor to get that
Right.
done.
So I guess if you can't get into your doctor, you can just start.
Yeah, you can start the process, yeah. It is changing and it will change soon, but for now, this is minutes. Okay, so you've got the point to your doctor. Then after that, once you've spent that 6 hours in ED and you've been bored to tears and really angry with the medical system, then you take your kid home and you let them rest. You take their phone off them and you put them in a nice quiet dark room and you say, stay there. They'll come out when they feel better, but I guarantee if they've had a good head knock, they'll stay in there, they'll rest, okay? That 48 hours following a concussion is when the most of that vacuuming up all those neurons that got dropped out, that's when it happens in that first 48 hours, okay? If they're in a nice quiet space, resting for that 48 hours, not on screens, then that's when most of that cleanup job's going to happen. After that, they can start moving, okay? They can start getting out 5 minutes here and there. But if they don't have that first rest, it can increase recovery time, okay?
So when it doesn't, because obviously sleep's important, but
Yes.
then like historically it's always been, oh, if you concussion, keep them awake, like
Yep.
don't, because
Yes.
they might lose consciousness. No, where's the line there? Like,
Yep.
what are you watching? You don't want to wake them up all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
you don't want to work them up, but you just want to make sure they're responsive, okay? So for the first 6 or so hours after a concussion, your kid's going to be awake anyway. They're tired, let them go to bed. As a parent now, myself, I would still wake my children, just wriggle them, make sure that they go, oh, go away, mum, every couple of hours. And that's what you want to do, just check on them. You don't need to get them up, walking around, just check they're responsive. If they're not, you're shaking them and they're not, breathing, but they're not there, that's when you bundle them off to ED, okay? Do let them sleep, though. Sleep is most important. Don't make them sit at the table for parents that make their kids sit at the table for 12 hours. Just sit there. I want to watch you for 12 hours.
oh my God.
Don't do that. Okay, but yeah, I would recommend as a parent as well, putting a bed in their room, sleeping on the floor of their room for the night, just making sure they're all right, okay? Sleep is the most important thing, but it's also important that nothing else. And that's why if you do spend your 6 hours in ED, you feel really good because you know you're on the right track. Okay. So this is where it comes in important for you guys as parents. So you've taken them to ED, you've put them in bed for 48 hours. They're real angry at you because they've got a concussion and their mood's not working anyway, and they're angry that you locked them in the room and took their phone away. You're doing the right thing as a parent in that stage. Then they can start getting back into things, okay? 5 minutes of doing things I'd normally do. Let them check their phone for 5 minutes. Let them check in with school or their mates, because we know that the social impact of a concussion can be huge because they're pretty much severed from that connection of, their friends. Give them 5 minutes and gradually build that up, okay? The beauty about young people is that they are really good at monitoring their own symptoms. They won't admit it, but they are. If they get a rearing headache, usually they'll put their phone away, okay? So we don't need to jump down their necks too much on this stage. We just need to remind them that if you're feeling something, it's time to stop. Our return to school process that we're doing at the moment, we'd say would take the process of 1 to 2 weeks, okay? So 48 hours in bed, 2 or 3 days at home, gradually building up 5 minutes at a time, 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes twice a day, 5 minutes an hour. And then after 3 or 4 days at school part-time. So just go for the morning, go for 1 or 2 periods, go to the sick bay, go back in the afternoon, gradually returning is key, and then building up to a longer journey too. Make sure your school knows, make sure that the teachers knows and the dean knows. Our research that we're about to publish shows that the most important thing for young people is knowing that the weight of school and the pressures of school is taken off them during that time. Okay, because they're in a mental state where they're going to start worrying because their brain's going to tell them they have to worry and it's going to blow up. What they really need is a phone call from the school or the dean to say, hey, Jimmy, you've had a head knock. I know you've got a maths test on Monday, but don't worry about that. I've got that under control. Okay, that connection is so important. So if you are in the school setting or you do have connection, tell them that. Okay, then back to sport. We strongly recommend, and New Zealand Rugby mandates it, that to get back to sport, you have to be cleared by a medical practitioner, a GP, before you go back to sport, okay? That doesn't mean you can't go out for walking, doing non-contact training, go out there and getting back into it. That's really important, but you're not going to go play again until you've been cleared by sport. That's what we strongly recommend. We know in reality, it can take 23 days to get into a doctor in the first place. So be guided by your gut and your common sense. But if you need that back up, you need to go see a doctor. Brent Donahue in Dunedin, if you ever do need a contact, I can put you on to him. He's a fantastic concussion doctor down there, as is the concussion room in Dunedin as well. We have some good connections there as well. Under 19s, we're currently working on a nationwide policy where we have 23 days to stand down across sports before they participate again, because we know that young people's brains take longer to recover from adults' brains. Adults, particularly for rugby and soccer, is 21 days. Some it's 19, but young people 23 days. Okay, 3.5 weeks. Now that's the average recovery time, but that's an average and it's not a target. Never tell your young person that have a head injury you should be right within 28 days, because they'll aim to be right within 28 days. Okay, and for some it will take 6 weeks. For some it will take a week and they'll be back. Every concussion is different. Okay. Now, going to the doctor straight away. Hopefully you're going to the doctor before they get back to sport, just to give you a bit more of a backing behind you as mum and dad. And then you are going to let them do exercises. Okay, walking is really important for concussion recovery after those first few days of rest. And just 5 minutes, gradually building it up. The best stories I hear is when the parents say, oh my goodness, I was walking for 5 hours with my kid. That's when you know that their recovery is going well. Okay. If you need more information, GP, ACC. Okay. Brain Injury Trust also have some information, but that's for a wee bit more long-term down the track, but they do have some good resources. And physiotherapists are a wealth of knowledge that need to be recognised more in the space, okay? All right, that's me. 5 minutes questions, yes.
That's great information for us that are sat here, but us as a coach, if the parent's not there and we arrange or take them to the doctor, but then it's up to the parents to manage the rest of that process. Are they going to have that information to be able to do that?
Well, you should, when you take your child to the doctor or someone takes to the doctor, be sent home a brochure from ACC with how to recover from concussion. If you're not asked for it, it is there. and you should have the recovery information that goes home with you.
So it's, at least as a coach, you're handing over to the parent. To
Yeah.
make sure they manage it, whereas
Yeah.
we can help our own kids, but
Yeah, and this is where it does fall down, is
Yeah.
that some parents don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the grey area, isn't it?
Yeah.
The best you can do though is just give them the OCC information.
Yeah.
And say, here you go, look, we'll leave your horse water.
Hey, your chart on one of those slides, it's the box in the back.
Yeah.
Is that something that is in that brochure, or is that something you could share?
Yep, it's all online in the brochure. And I can share that out as well. This one here.
That one.
Yeah, we also have a return to play one, which is also, oh, you both have some questions. And I think they're in here. These are the pocket cards. But it's also on the website as well. Return to play, return to learn. And that's the kind of stuff you give your parents as well.
And Kate, if I took my child to the doctor and diagnosed as a concussion
Mhm.
For rugby, would they not have to go back to the doctor to get clearance before they can play?
For rugby, they would.
Yeah.
Depending on where they're at with the concussion management process in New Zealand rugby, but yes, in theory, yes, they should.
I know in the Otago country,
Yeah.
they won't be allowed to play if they've been diagnosed.
That's right.
with concussion. They won't be allowed to, unless they can return to.
So before you leave the doctor, when you go to the admin desk, you book your second appointment there and then.
Is anyone else snow sports is the, so do they have a rule about returning or a second penalty?
Been very good.
They need the green light from the doctor to be able to come back training and racing.
Awesome.
So each sport is different.
Each sport is different. Yeah. Sport New Zealand ACC are currently working on unifying it, but at the moment it is all different. Yeah. Which is tricky when you've got a kid that plays rugby or perhaps does skiing, but also does cricket or soccer or hockey, who perhaps don't have the same guidelines.
Or kickboxing.
Or kickboxing, it's martial arts. Yeah, it's a whole nother kettle of fish to fry. Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately, if you do have a kid that plays multiple sports and they stood down for 23 days from rugby, they shouldn't be going to kickboxing training on that Thursday, okay? Or they shouldn't be can't play for the first 15, they shouldn't be playing for the first 5 during that return for jumps, okay? That's across the sport.
With the like, the head gear, stuff. Like, how much does that change things by wearing that at any sport, I guess?
Yeah. That's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to comment too far on that, but it's guaranteed to help someone with the bumps and bruises, but it's not going to deal with the force that goes through the spinal cord. Yeah. So yes, definitely. If my kids want to play rugby, which they won't be, they would wear headgear, but that won't necessarily
Going to change those big concussions.
not the big ones. Yeah, minor knocks and bumps. Yeah, but yeah.
Kia ora, folks. This talk is about us. This talk is about us having the basic knowledge, the basic skills, and the courage to support our young folks. I'm going to be talking to you about mental health first aid. And mental health first aid is really about democratizing the ability to notice when somebody is struggling with a mental health challenge, to be able to help them to cope in that moment, and then to know where you can point them to get relevant professional help. So yeah, kia ora, is Michelle Barry Grehan, is as Aaron May, is as Mlachlia May, agus is Aiscor na Hoige, and May Iwanika. My name is Barry Grehan. I am an Irishman from Dublin. I am a youth worker, and I'm based over in Wanaka. I am a footballer with Wanaka AFC, and I am a mental health first aider and recently trained instructor. I'm not a registered or a trained counsellor. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a trained doctor. I'm not a trained mental health professional. And I'm not trained in anything really. I'm barely house trained, I would say. But for me, the reason that I've chosen to get involved with mental health first aid is I'm an ordinary person wanting to be able to support ordinary folks when they're struggling. That's the simplicity of it for me. Ordinary folks supporting ordinary folks. Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what mental health first aid is, and I'm going to be inviting you to participate in upcoming workshops. There were 12 of us trained back in August, locally, including Vicky Patton, who's a guidance counsellor here at the school. And we are in our first waves of running mental health first aid training, similar to how St. John runs for physical first aid. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Cool. So we'll start with what's mental health? Public conversations about mental health, they tend to be quite vague, and we get to a surface level. And so what I'm wanting to do today is to be a bit more specific and to be a bit more descriptive. And we'll begin. So up behind me here is the World Health Organization's definition of what mental health is. A couple of things to point out about that is that mental health is a good state. It's not the negative view of how you are. So mental health is a good state. It's a state of well-being. And it is a place where we want to be able to recognize our own abilities and to be able to express ourselves, to be able to participate in work and play, and to be able to cope with things that go wrong. A really nice way of thinking about it is if I have good mental health, I can experience stressful situations. And when those situations resolve, the stress resolves. Poor mental health is when that stress persists. And so mental health challenge, I use that language quite a bit, and that's the language that we tend to use in the training. And it covers quite a few things. But the essence of it is a mental health challenge is a change in thoughts, feelings, or behavior that impair functioning. I think functioning is a funny word because it feels like we're talking about humans as machines, but functioning really is the big three: sleep, activity, diet, and then other things like motivation, relationships. And a mental health challenge is a challenge when it persists over time. For example, for depression to be diagnosed in a young person, it must persist for 2 weeks. And we'll talk a little bit more about depression in a moment. Mental health, again, I found it really powerful when I learned that we can break mental health down into kind of 5 main mental health challenges. We can break down mental health challenges into 5. And they are depression, anxiety, eating disorders, psychosis, and problematic substance use. So it gives us a little bit more of a clear picture of, okay, what's the actual experience and lived experience of someone who's going through a mental health challenge. So we'll talk a little bit about depression. There's a fellow called Beck who came up with this really, I find, helpful way of seeing what depression is. And Beck created a triangle. And Beck's triad is depression. I have depression if I have a negative view of myself, if I have a negative view of other people, and if I have a negative view of the future. I'm shit, the world's shit, it's always going to be shit. That's the way I like to remember what depression is. And if we look at the signs and symptoms of depression, a clinician will look for certain symptoms to be present for them to diagnose the mental health challenge of depression in a young person or in anyone. And at a minimum, someone must show one of the two at the top, the 2 bolded ones. So a low mood or a lack of interest or pleasure in the things that would typically give that person pleasure or interest in. And a clinician would also look for 4 other of the symptoms that are listed here. So that would be for them to diagnose mild depression. As we go deeper in that scale of severity, they'd look for more symptoms to be present. But I talk about this because this is just a little insight into what we're trying to do with mental health first aid is to build our awareness of, okay, what are those little signs? What are those little tells that somebody is struggling beyond just the regular struggle of life? That's our first step, to be able to notice. Our next step is then to be able to approach and have a conversation, to have some questions to hand that can soften what is a very difficult conversation. And then thirdly, it's about supports. Where can we point them to for local, relevant, appropriate professional help? Where can we point them to for self-help? And what are the other complementary things that they can be doing to help them on their journey of recovery? Great. So mental health first aid, who is it for? So there are different flavors of mental health first aid. The idea came from a couple in Australia back in 2007, I believe. He was a mental health researcher and she was a counsellor and a nurse. And they wanted to increase the mental health literacy of the public in Australia. And they figured there's already a fantastic model. And when we look at concussion first aid, when we look at physical first aid, why don't we shape something for the less tangible and slightly less visible, completely less visible, challenge that is our minds. So a lot of the practices and principles that we explore together are similar to what you would learn with a St. John's physical first aid course. And again, it's ordinary folks being able to support ordinary folks. And there are different courses, and what I offer and what I'm trained in is youth mental health first aid. And youth mental health first aid, I thought when I signed up, it was me as a youth worker being able to train young people to support their peers. It wasn't that. And that is coming next year to New Zealand. And that's called teen mental health first aid. But youth mental health first aid is people who care for, look after, coach, work with, or are the parents of young people, having some of those basic foundations to be able to support those young people. And so the course is only available for those over the age of 18, but anybody is welcome to participate. Yeah, I haven't too much more to add to the mix. What we do have coming up is we have, so at the moment, this Thursday, I'll be finishing the first series of training with the first group of participants. That's a course over in Wanaka that was run with some parents of young footballers and parents of young gymnasts and a couple of youth workers. The sports space is where I wanted to play first, because I come from a very sporting family, and I know, and even the interrelation of going through those serious injuries and the knock-on effects to our minds, and the importance of mindset, especially at like a high performance level where our identity can be wrapped up in us being the player, the skier, the snowboarder, the athlete. And for me, it's a really important space that we're able to give young people the support that they need as they're figuring themselves out, and also under the pressures of high performance sport. And so the first course is underway. I will be running a second course in December, and I'll be looking to potentially run a course with Vicky over this side of the hill, either in December or in February next year. And a lot of it will rely on what interest we get from the different towns. And some good news is that these first two courses that I'm running are part funded by Te Hau Toka, which is the Southern Lakes Wellbeing Group. And what that means is that the price for participation is significantly lower. It's $40 to cover your training pack. And that covers either 2 full-day workshops, plus pie and keeping you fed and watered, or we can also run it as 3 evening workshops or even 4 shorter evening workshops. But yeah, those first 2 courses, the one that's happening currently and the next one, are going to be part funded, so they will be subsidized price. And after that, the price for participating will be a good bit higher. So just an extra call to, if you're curious and interested, an extra call to show your interest as early as you can. Like I say, I'm not an expert in anything. but I care, and there's power, and I'm seeing that in our first series of workshops. Yeah, but I'm seeing the power in us being able to have conversations and to figure out the nuances of supporting young people with their mental health, particularly when they can be volatile and irritable and moody at the best of times.